I don't want you to get nervous because we make this very easy and a very quick install kit. So you're gonna take your drill, a big gang of wires. Well, this is this is just in case for any point in the future you ever have to shorten these for any reason, or maybe you decide to do a custom fender and you want to stretch it a couple inches.
Or feet.
Or feet. Well, we got you covered. Harley guys, they don't care. They like funny shit. Indian guys are very, very aggressive, and they will tear you apart. You can do this on your own. Sometimes it helps to have a friend. Depending on your unique situation, this can be done at home all alone. Would you look at that? It almost slides right through. Don't want to be losing any luggage. Make sure you get them good and tight. Today we're going to be installing a Scout Classic Taillight Kit. We're going to be going from this to this. So it's really going to give you a unique flavor and really add some spice to the bike. So first step, we're going to remove the seat. To remove the seat, we're going to lift up on the front and we're going to pop that post off. Next, we're going to be removing the saddlebags. Pretty easy. For those of you who have not done this, it's actually really quick. All we're going to do is we're going to fold that back. We're going to pull that off. Your pin is going to might fall out, which that's what we need to happen. I'm going to do the same thing with the rear. Just going to pull up, invert the lever, pull it off. There it goes. We're just going to keep the hardware inside the saddlebag. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lift up and pull right off. Just to make sure that we don't lose anything, we're going to take the latch mechanism out. Okay, once you're to this point, now you're in the home stretch. It's pretty easy. So inside this pocket here is a 6mm Allen bolt. What I'd recommend doing is cracking all 4 of them loose first. And then if you happen to have a luggage rack like this bike does, what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be jumping up to the top here. We're also going to be removing these 2 6mm because the luggage rack is going to be staying with the fender. If you don't have a luggage rack, all you're going to be doing is focusing on the 4 fender mount bolts. Again, I would just keep everything together. And what I would do so you don't lose the screws, I would just set it right side up. We're going to lift up on the fender and we're going to disconnect our rear light harness. We're going to remove these 2 zip ties. And what that's going to do is that's going to free up our plug. Now you'll notice that this piece just fell off, okay? This piece actually has a little nipple right here mounted to the fender, and this is where your wire retainer goes to keep the wires up and out of the tire. So all we're gonna do from here is we're gonna lift up on the tab right there, we're gonna pull, and your fender is ready to come off. Quick and easy. I'm going to bring it over to the bench over here. And because I have this luggage rack, I'm going to use it to my advantage. I'm going to go ahead and flip the fender over. We're going to cut a few more zip ties. So we're going to cut this main harness tie. And what that's going to do is that's just holding all your wires in their place. Cut this guy. Careful not to snip your loom. I've loosened the 2 bottom nuts. So now what we're going to do is we have 1 more nut to go. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect our connectors. And then to get to this 3rd one, we're actually going to take this connector off of its retainer. To do so, we're going to take a little screwdriver. We're going to lift up on this tab right here. When you lift up on that tab, it's going to release the tooth right there. You're just going to pull straight out. And to get these connectors disconnected, again with your screwdriver, we're just going to press down on the tab right there, and they pop out. We're going to mark the top of this connector here, and then with this one, we're actually going to mark the side. And what that's going to do is that's going to help us differentiate the two plugs so that we can make sure that we get them connected right the first time when we go back together. We're going to be lifting on this little black tab. Be very careful with that guy, as you don't want to break it. There we go. Okay, so now we're free. Now we can go ahead and move these wires out of the way. Get to this last one here. Once you have all three nuts loose but not removed, what we're going to do is we're actually going to support the rear of the taillight. Then we can go ahead and take our screws off. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lift this plate off here, and you have washers down here. You can either take those off now, or me with my bare claws, I can't get in there, so I'm just going to lift them off. Obviously, I know they're not going to go anywhere. They're just going to fall in the fender. We're going to set that aside, and we're just going to draw the stock taillight out. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to flip this back over, making sure I don't lose my washers, even though we're not going to be reusing them. And I'm going to take the time right now to use a little Shine Werks, and I'm going to clean up this gasket surface area. For those of you who don't know Shine Werks, that's our cleaning product that we use on all of our motorcycles. You can use it on paint, plastic, trim, chrome. All we ask is that you don't use it on seat or your tires. It is safe for our windshields, as it was originally formulated for the polycarbonate windshields. Has a nice spray nozzle or a stream function. We won't be using that today, but give that a little pump. Fold our rag here. Key is you want to wet the rag, because we don't want to be dragging the dust across the paint. We want to pick it up. So we're just going to go around this gasket here. I'll get up inside there, just clean this up. We will be saving this gasket. So now you can see some streaks in there. So let's flip this over. Let me give this a wipe. And watch that fender transform to brand new. Would you look at that?
Would you just look at it?
There's buff more right there.
That's not gonna buff. Let's be honest. The rear fender gets no love. I don't want you to get nervous, because again, we make this very easy and a very quick install kit. So you're gonna take your drill with your 9/32 bit, but we're just gonna drill out these three holes, 1, 2, and 3. And the reason for that is we're actually using new hardware, so we want to make sure that our kit goes in the hole. I would actually fold your gasket down just to make sure that we don't put any unnecessary tears in the gasket. Would you look at that? It almost slides right through. Now I'm going to set this gasket back up in place, so then I can get to that hole right there. And just like that, we're done with our customization. So this can get flipped back over. And now we're actually going to move over to our new lights. They come with hardware. But as you can tell, this bracket looks a little funny. Well, these lights happen to mount just like this, and we can't really get a flathead screwdriver in behind here, so that's why we're giving you some 1/4-inch bolts with 7/16 heads. Before we start installing these lights, I'm going to go ahead and install this grommet. This is where Shine Werks is going to come in handy once again. 1,001 uses for Shine Werks. A little pump shot just like that. We're going to roll this gasket. We're going to roll this grommet into this hardware plate. To do so, you can see the recessed middle area there. We're going to push that down into the hole, and then we're just going to work our way around gently and just get it pushed up in the hole. You'll know that your grommet has been properly seated when you flip it around and you verify that all edges are the same. Now we're ready to install our classic Scout taillights. We're going to take 2 of our 7/16 1/4-inch bolts. We're going to utilize the lock washers that came out of these lights. I'm going to go ahead and feed the wires through. I'm going to set my light down. I'm going to go ahead and feed these wires right through the grommet, one by one. So this is where it may get a little tricky. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your smaller bulb is facing the ground. You know which way is the ground because of our studs. So if we match the studs up to the fender, this would actually be incorrect. So we're going to flip this just like this. Now I can go ahead and throw in my bolts. These can be a little tricky, so you're going to have some patience. I'm trying to keep my composure here, you motherfucker. Tech tip of the day, patience is not something you can give. Patience is something you have to develop on your own as you grow. Where the fuck is my wrench?
Patience.
Now we're going to take our 7/16 wrench. We're going to go ahead and snug these up. Be careful not to go too tight. Now we're ready for our second light. Feed my wires through the... And for the top light, we want to make sure that the orientation is the same as the bottom light. And go ahead and grab our other provided hardware with our lock washers that we removed from the lights. And the top light's going to be a lot easier. The reason for that is we don't have a backing plate to fight with. So this is quick and easy install. That's why I always start with the bottom light. And go ahead with our 7/16 wrench again, that you have to use the open end for, or a socket, which I have. Don't over tighten the light. Now what I would do is I would go ahead and give a little bit of a pull and a little bit of a pull. And the reason for that is just so you have a little bit of give to those wires, because we don't want to be pulling them out of the taillight housings. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use one of the provided zip ties, and I'm going to cinch those wires right there. The reason for doing that is now these wires can come out if they need, but they can't go forward, allowing the wires to continually back out. Now we're ready for our install. We're going to go ahead and feed our wires up through the cavity here, the open cavity. And then we're simply going to make sure that our gasket is lined up correctly to accept our hardware plate. Here's where the tricky part comes in, is we're going to hold the hardware kit into the fender. We're then going to gently release the light kit. We're going to feed these wires in through this bracket here, retaining tension on the wires. Now that I can put my hand back on the light housing, we're going to go ahead and line up our bolts. And the nice thing about our light bracket is that we're using a little bit bigger stud. So, as you know, we drilled holes in the fender. Well, we didn't drill the holes in the plastic mount here. So when you go ahead and use some force to push that light kit in, you can now let go. We're going to be utilizing the new hardware provided in the kit in the form of a flat washer and a lock nut. Be sure to only start these for right now, as we're going to be using some zip ties to hold down the wires, and you want to be able to separate the backing plate from the light plate. There's a few different ways that we can wire this now. We can either coil this like this, and we can stuff it all in here, making a nice tight pocket of wires. Is we're going to take our provided plug-and-play harness, and we're going to connect our wires. Now, these are very simple install. Green goes to green, and of course, black goes to black. Now, because this is only a tail light and brake light, you don't have to worry about getting the lights mixed up. Okay, now that we have all 4 of these connected, what we're gonna do is we're going to remove a stud of your choice. Here's a pro tip. With your lighting module plug-and-play kit, what we would actually be doing, if you're gonna button it up how I do, is we're actually going to feed the ground wire through this little slot here, coming out the bottom, and attaching it like so. Just like that. We'll reinstall our nut with the washer underneath the terminal. Remember when we took our stock harness clip off, we took it off of this peg. Well, we went ahead and reinstalled this harness plug to the existing peg. Well, now we have this hanging out here. What we're gonna do now is we're actually just gonna gently tuck that in place just right like that. Now that we have our harness kit in, we're gonna go ahead and tighten down our fender, or our light. Now, if you're using a socket like I am, you can go ahead and tighten it down with having the connector in place. It's only with the stock hardware that it gets a little challenging. With this ground wire here, you want to make sure that you hold a finger on it as you're tightening so that you don't rip the wire out of the connector. And we're going to do the last and final one right here. Now the cool thing is, if you remember, we had marked our connectors. Well, this is just to show you here at Klockworks, we go above and beyond. Why? Because with your new light kit, we mark left and right. Left and right. So you can't get them mixed up. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna grab one of our trusty zip ties. We're gonna put it through that little slot right there. I'm gonna come around our module here. I'm gonna go ahead and tuck these wires in. I'm gonna give this a snug. Just like that. I'm gonna cut my access off. And now my module is securely in place. So now, where do the wires go? Well, we're gonna coil these up into this pocket here, and then we're going to take our excess, we're going to do the same thing. By grabbing where the connectors go right here, we're going to go ahead and give them a twist while holding your hand here, giving another twist, making yourself 2 loops. We're going to gently tuck these into our little pocket here. I'm going to grab a zip tie, and I'm going to gently cinch that zip tie down, holding all of our wires in place. Then I'm going to take my other zip tie, I'm going to come through here. I guess I'm just going to go like that. Now we're ready to install our fender. So when we go to install our fender, we're going to install it in the top here. We're going to rest it on that same button. We're going to connect our plug-and-play harness together, making sure that we get it securely clipped. Remember the nipple on the fender? We're going to connect that zip tie retainer right onto that nipple. I'm going to drop the fender down, and now when you look, you have plenty of unobstructed clearance. So now we can go ahead and grab our 6mm. We can start going back together. Just like when we came off, to go back on, we're going to install all 4 of these loosely to make sure that we don't have any binding issues. Now before we go to tightening down our fender, if you have a luggage rack like we do, we're going to reinstall these bolts now. Now the first bolts I would tighten would be the luggage rack bolts. Don't want to be losing any luggage. Make sure you get them good and tight. Now we can move right into securing the fender. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and reinstall our saddlebags. You notice these two hooks here. Those two hooks are actually going to sit right here. But remember, before we do that, we want to install our so-called weld nuts. So line up your holes. And a tip to do this is when you go on with the saddlebag, make sure that your two pins are at the bottoms of the slots. This will allow you to then drop right down onto the saddlebag mount. Now all you need are your two pins and your two latches. Now to go on with these, it's pretty easy. We're simply going to pull out on the tab. We're going to install your pin equally on both sides. Then we're going to stick the top of the latch up, get it centered into the housing. We're going to pull up on that. Then when you get it in, you're simply going to rotate down, securing the saddlebag. Now, your saddlebag is nice and secure. Don't forget to latch your saddlebag. Now we're going to move on to the seat. So for the install of the seat, we're going to line up this lock to this lock here. To do that, you just use your eyeballs, push it down, and then what you're going to do is you're just going to push down on the front here, and now you're locked in. So, last but certainly not least, let's give it a try. And we still maintained our factory turn signals. Notice how there's no fast flashing. Thanks to our plug and play module, you won't ever have that issue. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys supporting the Indian Scouts. If you haven't seen it, go check out the new 2024 and we'll see you next time.